A long time ago, I was asked by a subscriber, I forget his name, I think he was from Bangladesh, I'm not certain if he still watches my vlogs, but if I could explain how I read the tarot. And, it's a fair question, but it's one that I was struck with trepidation because of reading the tarot is very personal, and I think that the way I do it is extremely personal to me. But, I've been thinking about it and I thought, well, no, I ought to maybe cut a vlog on this. When I say it's very personal, you'll hear a lot of tarot readers saying that they're intuitive, which really means they stray from the sort of accepted meaning of the cards, which we all do to an extent. So I suppose you could say I'm intuitive. I tend to make up stories, but based on, the more accepted meanings. So I don't like to use the word intuitive for what I do. You'll hear others saying that they're channeling. Well, channeling is sort of a new age concept. Obviously, you can go back to theosophists. But in particular, it was sort of popularised by Edgar Casey. And, I'm a bit sniffy about the new age. So I don't think for 1 minute that I'm channeling. Channeling means that you're allowing some sort of external force, spirit inside you, who's giving you the interpretation of the tarot. So I don't think I'm doing that. No. And I think my personal way is a reflection of how I learn. And that is, I learn about sort of the accepted meaning as though there is an accepted meaning. And from that, I get inspiration. So I interpret the tarot in that way. Now, the next thing to say is, well, what is tarot doing? People assume that it's fortune telling. And of course, many of my readings on this channel do have the appearance of fortune telling. But most tarot readers will be very firm and say, no, it's not fortune telling at all. It's tapping into influences on your psychology. And it's to help you understand maybe even the hidden or the shadow side, to use Carl Jung's words, of the self. And I honestly do believe that's what it is. But then, of course, people do want it to be a bit more like fortune telling. So, all tarot readers somewhat bow down to that. Even though I do think that it is deeply psychological. Why would it be deeply psychological? Well, I don't know, in truth. But, as soon as you begin reading the tarot, you realise there's something quite profound in it. So I'll talk about the meaning shortly, but basically they seem to have been designed to tap into things that are within our collective conscious, I suppose is the best way of putting it. So my explanation is going to be somewhat psychological, although perhaps not as psychological as many people would give, because I will give you the sort of accepted, and I say that there is no real accepted meaning, but I'll give you the accepted meaning of each of the cards. Where did tarot originate? Well, it's claimed, and I think again it's by New Agers, that tarot cards have been found in the tombs of ancient Egypt. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but, I'm mistrustful of it. Other people have said that it originated in the Islamic world in the Middle East, and of course, being a Muslim, I have some sympathy with that. What I can say is that I actually believe that they developed from normal playing cards. And you can use the normal playing cards to read tarot. And indeed, when we go through the different tarot cards themselves, you'll see how they evolved from regular playing cards. You know, there's suites, there's like number cards, if you like, and there's royal cards. So, you know, you can see how it emerged from that, and I think that's the most likely explanation. And, you know, as I say, you can use regular playing cards for reading tarot, and indeed that's how my wife does it. So I think that's the most likely origin. The first cards that we can really say are tarot seem to have emerged 1450s, 1460s in the city-states in Italy. Well, of course, they did have substantial trade with the Ottoman Empire, and possibly, therefore, with Arabs. So does it have an Arab origin? Well, you know, I think it might have, but I'm not going to go into that on this explanation. So let's just say they began in Italy. Of course, these early Italian cards were hand painted, so it really sort of spread with the printing press, and in particular to France. So some of the earliest printed tarot decks come from France, and one in particular that's still very popular today, and many people swear is the best tarot deck to use, is Tarot Marseille. It's very different, or not very, but it's quite different to the tarot I'm going to describe to you. And what I need to say to you, it's each to his own. What I would do is not go for something that's difficult to understand. I'm going to talk to you about fairly easy to understand, fairly widespread tarot and widespread meanings. But, you know, as you gain your confidence, you might want to try something very different, such as the Tarot Marseille. And with this printing press and spread of tarot, most countries developed their own sort of tarot systems. So quite a popular one here in Indonesia, given that it was a Dutch colony, is the Dutch tarot deck. But the German is different again. I think probably in most of these countries they use, although these decks are still used, the sort of English tarot is the one that now dominates. By far the most popular tarot deck is known as the Rider-Waite Tarot, and this was named after A.E. Waite and Pamela Coleman Smith, who were members of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, and they were originally published by the Rider Company in 1908. It's said that A.E. Waite sort of designed the framework, and that Pamela Coleman Smith did the illustrations, but that is disputed. I think Pamela Coleman Smith probably had a much bigger influence on it. She's certainly a very interesting character. She's also known as Pixie, and she was born in Jamaica. It's somewhat disputed whether or not she's a lady of colour, but if you look at photos of her, you know, I think it's entirely possible. So, yeah, all credit to her, absolutely all credit to her. And I would suggest that when you start reading, you at least use a version of the Rider-Waite Tarot, because of, you know, if you want to look something up on Google, you'll find much more information on it than any of the other decks. So at least begin with Rider-Waite. And now, even though I love it, I don't use the sort of standard Rider-Waite deck, but all the decks I use are based on it. So the decks that I use, first of all, the steampunk, which I find very easy to use. It's I can very much recommend it. But maybe steampunk isn't your bag. Now, the other one that you will see me use is Light Visions, and I was attracted to it because of its sort of black and white, or sort of dark purple and white format, and I just thought I liked it. But at first I struggled with it. I've got used to it now, but I don't think it's for beginners, even though it is based on the Rider-Waite, deck. And I was going to tell you another reason I liked it, that it was designed by a Mancunian artist that used to work at Cosgrove Hall. But I've got that completely wrong. It must be the steampunk that was designed by him. It was actually, this was designed by James R. Eads, a Los Angeles-based artist. But the deck I use the most is known as Tarot Nusantara, and this was designed by someone in Yogyakarta or Jogja in Java called Hisyam Al-Fachari. And I love it because of, well, I'm based in Indonesia, I live near Jogja. I can understand the cultural references. The words on it are written in Bahasa Indonesia, which of course I broadly understand. I know people who know him, and he did see it, although he takes a very psychological view. I think he tried to use it in sort of behavioural sciences, managerialist type of way, which I take with a pinch of salt, even though I do think that they're deeply psychological. But again, it's probably not one for beginners unless you happen to be Indonesian. Now, all those decks I use are actually based on the Rider-Waite, even though some of them may not look at all like it. But it does make it easier if you use, at least initially, one that's based on the Rider-Waite. But there are many, many other systems. The one that I would probably buy at some time is Josephine McCarthy, my favourite magician's Querrier deck. But this is completely different to the Rider-Waite, and it's loosely based on the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. So it would mean learning completely new skills if you were to pick up one of these other decks that is not based on the Rider-Waite. So it's certainly, I don't think, for beginners. Now, the other tradition within tarot reading is something known as an oracle deck. These can be used independently from tarot, but very often you'll see readers combining tarot with oracle decks. Often they use oracle decks first. I'm not entirely certain why. And I keep saying to myself, I'll buy an oracle deck at some time. But whenever I investigate them, they feel like sort of gifts for your favourite auntie, or they I don't know. I'm just unconvinced when I really look at them. They tend to be much more prescriptive than the tarot, so tell you exactly what they mean, and maybe that's what I've got against it. As I say, each to his own. Follow whatever system you want. But I'm now going to go into an explanation of the tarot itself, using the Nusantara, which, remember, is based on the Rider-Waite. So this would apply to all Rider-Waite. I'm only using Nusantara as an illustration. Now, the tarot is split into major and minor arcana. The major arcana are very big forces impacting on your psychology. impacting on you. The minor are less important. Maybe they're more day to day, and the major are, more long term, is a way of seeing it. So I'm going to tackle the minor first of all, and the minor is split into suites. So very much like, a regular playing cards deck. And the first of these suites is the cups, or you might hear them called chalices. And they're very emotional level of consciousness. Cup, I suppose it's it's no surprise that it's to do with maybe love, feelings, relationships. They're very watery, very fluid. They flow, but can be powerful. But they're sort of soft in the way that they do it. And it's sort of fluidity of your emotions, fluidity of relationships. Can be about cleansing as well. More about thinking with your heart rather than your head. They're associated with astrological signs, and it would be Pisces, Cancer and Scorpio. Next suite is the Pentacles, or coins. So no surprise, it's often about finances, work, but it can be about health and creativity. Often to do with things outside of us rather than the sort of inner psychological. But they can be associated with the ego and your self-image. Their element is earth, so they're very tactile, very earthly, very tangible things, very grounded. Covering material aspects of life, I suppose, and they're associated with Taurus, Virgo and Capricorn. Now we have the Suite of Swords. Now if you think about it, this came about in medieval times. So, a sword was associated with a knight, so it was associated with wealth. People had the time for sort of a level of consciousness, that could think and use their intellect. It's about sort of attitudes, beliefs. It can be about information. Of course, they're double-edged swords. So it's a balance between intellect and power, as it would be with a knight. Their element is air, so it's sort of intangible, unseen, about movement, things that go unnoticed, really. Associated, although they are associated with action, changes in action, courage, and etc. In terms of horoscope, zodiac signs, they're associated with Aquarius, Libra and Gemini. Now we have the Suite of Wands, but you could see it as a stick or a club. And of course, if knights carried a sword, then the common man used a stick, as it were. And it's a sort of an all-purpose thing. It is associated with sort of a primal energy, strength, creativity, ambition. Its element is fire, it's hot, it's wild, it's unpredictable. But it is about passion, enthusiasm, maybe sexuality. It's quite a masculine card. Maybe associated with egotistical behaviour, impulsiveness, certainly. It's a fire sign, so therefore it's associated with Leo, Sagittarius and Aries. Now I'm going to start off with the Ace of Cups, which is arguably the first card in the deck, although the major arcana, the Fool, has a number 0, so I suppose really that is the first card, but it makes sense to start with the Ace of Cups. Now what you're going to find is that the wands, or the odd numbers, tend to be about doing, tend to be action, and the even numbers tend to be more cerebral thinking, decisions, etc. The other thing that I'd say to you is that other readers will tell you there are no good and bad cards, but often the action is quite good, whereas the cerebral is you having to step back from the action. The other thing is that many readers take reversed cards. That's if the cards come dealt upside down, and that reverses the meaning. I try and avoid it at all costs, but if it does happen, then it does reverse the meaning. And I'm not going to go into the meaning of the reversals. So if you remember that Cups is sort of about love, and so we have a one or an Ace of Cups here, so it's probably about new love, new relationships, could be about compassion or creativity. Now if you remember, Pentacles is about material things. So the Ace of Pentacles would tend to be probably about new money, new opportunities, maybe new jobs, new career. Could be about abundance, could be that you're manifesting these things as well. If you remember, Swords is quite a cerebral suite. So the Ace of Swords is probably about new ideas. It could be sort of breakthroughs, could be success, but I think it's more about sort of a mental clarity. That's the most likely explanation. If you remember, the sword is associated with knights, so is more cerebral. Whereas the wand is associated with peasantry and is more action orientated. But often you'll find that the swords and the wands have quite similar meanings. And so the Ace of Wands is about new opportunities. It could be about inspiration though, but growth and potential. Now I told you that the odds were sort of actions and the evens are more thinking about it. So we move on to the Two of Cups. So the Ace of Cups could have been about new love coming to you. So the two is more about this bedding in. Could be partnerships. It could be sort of a real strong feeling of love and mutual attraction. Thus, if you remember, the Ace of Pentacles was maybe about new money, new jobs, whereas the two is you sort of struggling to come to terms with that. It's a sort of a work-life balance card, multiple priorities, time management. You're having to prioritise, you're having to be adaptable. And if the Ace of Swords was sort of new ideas coming to you, the Two of Swords is now you're struggling to take a decision. You're finding it difficult. It's you're stymied. You're avoiding taking a decision almost. So if the swords are more cerebral and the wands are more action orientated, The Two of Wands is more about, yeah, you've got to make a decision, but you're planning it. You're sort of discovering you are more likely to take the decisions and progress with them. So it's very much a future planning card. If you remember, Cups is about sort of love, relationships, and it's an even card, it's an odd card, so therefore it's sort of an action orientated thing. So what could it mean? Well, it's about friendships, collaboration, but perhaps about celebration, even creativity. And Pentacles is more the material things. So the Three of Pentacles is about collaboration. You could say teamwork, but it tends to be a teamwork whereby you've each got your specialisms and you need to come together to create a synergy. Could be about learning. It's certainly a card of implementation. One of the things that I've not mentioned to you is that once you've sort of broadly learnt these meanings, I tend to just look at the cards themselves. And that is the importance of choosing a deck that seems to suit you. Because the cards themselves should tell you what they're about. First of all, look at this. Well, there's three swords, so we know it's a Three of Swords. But the other thing is that they're going through a heart. So this is clearly a card of a broken heart. Could be pain, sorrow, grief, heart, grief, hurting, it's all those sorts of things. Now, it doesn't seem a very nice card, but remember it's a minor arcana, so generally speaking, it's probably not going to last. Now, I always say that when I do a reading, and believe me, I suffered from a broken heart for nearly 30 years, so I'm not trying to make light of it. Now, if the Two of Wands was about planning, the Three is much more action planning. It's much more saying, okay, I've had a look at what I might do, but now I'm really going to put a stake in the ground. What is it I'm going to do? It's about expansion, progress. If you look at it, he's looking overseas, so it can be about overseas opportunities. So back to the more sort of cerebral, if you like, Four of Cups. And this is you taking some time out, meditation, re-evaluating things. You could see it as being apathetic, and remember, each card has its positive and negative meanings. I see this as quite positive, but one of the negatives, if you look at the card, behind him is this sort of divine cup, and that is that maybe in going inside yourself you're missing opportunities. But overall I see it as a very useful energy. And the Four of Pentacles, well, look at it. He's being a bit miserly, isn't he? He's holding on to that money very carefully. That's not necessarily bad. Saving money isn't necessarily a bad thing. Conserving what you've got, looking for security, maybe looking for control. But it could also mean scarcity. And what does a knight do after he's been doing things? Well, he takes a rest. So the Four of Swords is very much about you taking a rest, recuperation. Could be meditation, contemplation. But I see it very strongly as about time for a rest. maybe this is one where the difference between the swords and the wands is most apparent in this 4. And that is, if the knight takes a rest, the peasants go out to play. So it's a card of celebration, it's a card of harmony, maybe a card of homecoming. I mean, it could be a sort of relaxation, but it's a sort of much more joyous rather than cerebral relaxation. Now, I know many of my fellow tarot readers would be horrified at me saying that the odds tend to be more positive and the evens tend to be more negative, but this card brings it sharply into focus. If you remember, the 4 of Cups was quiet contemplation, getting your head around things, whereas the 5 is much more pessimistic. It's a card of pessimism, disappointment, maybe a card of failure or regret. And we can see this 5 of Pentacles is also quite negative. In fact, it's a card I don't like to see. It's a card of poverty. It could also mean no friends. It's a card of maybe more a poverty mindset than objectively, although it could be about financial loss. Card of worry. Again, it's a minor arcana. It's likely not to last. And it's as much your own view that you feel like you're in poverty as objectively poverty. And, you know, I'm not into, well, I am into manifesting. I'm not into the law of attraction. Although, you know, manifesting does work, you know. But I'm not really into the law of attraction. But for sure, if you think you're poor, you will bring yourself more poverty. So it is a mindset thing, really. Another card I don't like to see, the 5 of Swords. It's a card of winning at all costs. Card of conflict, but you know, it's quite a nasty conflict. It could be about defeat, disagreements. But there's somebody trying to win at all costs here. I think it's quite a childish energy that's going on here. He's had a fight with them and he's taken their swords because he's won. But it also looks like he's whacked them on the bottoms. So I see it as quite a playgroundy sort of energy, this one. Less concerning to me is the 5 of Wands. Yes, it is about conflict. It is about disagreement. It is about competition. Could be simply about diversity. But it tends to be the sort of disagreement that you're pulling in different directions, but if only you got together and talked it through, you'd probably be able to resolve it. Well, I bet you couldn't wait for the 5s to end, so we're back to even numbers now, which should be more positive. Now, as I keep saying, other tarot readers will tell you there's no good and bad cards, and that is true, but, you know, it does seem as though as we're moving through these cards, the good ones are getting better and the bad ones are getting worse. As I say, there's no good and bad, but that does seem what it's like. And I was going to save this snippet until later, but I think I need to come out with it now. Tarot is like a journey through life, so the minor arcana represent a minor journey through life, if you like, and the major represent a major journey through life. And so, you know, maybe things as we get older seem to feel a bit more serious, but maybe they're not. So now we have the 6 of Cups. Well, this is actually about childhood memories. Innocence, joy, maybe thinking of the past. It could even, if you remember, Cups is about romance, it could even be thinking about a childhood sweetheart. And Pentacles, you know, about material things. So what would the Six of Pentacles mean? Well, it's a card of charity, giving of wealth, sharing wealth, generosity. Now, I don't know if this is you giving. I'm sorry, I said giving of wealth. It could be receiving of wealth. So I don't know if it's you giving or you receiving, but it could be either of those. I've come to see the Six of Swords as a massively important card. You see, it's a card of moving on. It's a card of dumping baggage. It's change, transition, maybe even a rite of passage. And why do I think it's so important? Well, accepting change, moving on, and releasing baggage is very, very important for you to be able to go through your journey of life. You can't receive new blessings. You can't receive new changes if you're wedded to the past. Therefore, you have to. Frequently, you have to move on in this way, move on from the past, in order for you to accept new blessings that are coming to you. So if the Swords is a sort of psychological moving on, a more practical one is the Six of Wands, which is a card of moving on. It's about progress, but it's about self-confidence, success, and indeed public recognition for that success. Now, I keep saying that, there are no good and bad cards, but here's one that I tend to interpret more negatively than most. The Seven of Cups. And that is, it's a card of opportunities. It's a card of multiple opportunities. Maybe wishful thinking, illusions, but choices as well. But if you look at the cards, some of them look to be poisoned chalices. So it's sort of a card of choose wisely. It might also be a card saying, well, spread your bets, as it were. Translating that energy to the sort of materialist, we have the Seven of Pentacles, which is a card of long-term investments, taking a long-term view, sustainable results, maybe even perseverance. Now, having said that odds tend to be good and evens tend to be less good, we have a card which I think, the Seven of Swords, is not such... Well, I don't like it when it crops up. It's a card of deception. It's a card of betrayal. Of course, it might be, if it was you doing it, you might want to put that nicer as acting strategically. Are you getting away with it? I'm not too certain you are. You're looking behind, you're doing something wrong, and you might get caught. Is it you, or is it you being betrayed, or is it you doing it? Well, you can't tell from the cards. You've just got to go with your feel, and that's true for all of these cards. Maybe there's clues in the zodiac sign, but I don't think there is. You've got to go with your feeling on these things. And transposing that energy onto wands, well, it can be about competition. It can be about perseverance. It can be about protection. But I see it as a card of winning small victories, as it were. You've not won the war, but you've won small victories. But there is the chance that it makes other people jealous of you. So we're back to the evens, and it does feel somewhat negative. The Eight of Cups, however, is one that I read quite positively, so you can see why people say what they do. It's a card of withdrawal, escapism, disappointment, card of walking away from things. And I read it positively because I think this is a very necessary thing to do in our journey through life. When we've had enough of something, to know when is the time to walk and start a new chapter. Again, the Eight of Pentacles I don't see as particularly negative. It's a card of learning new skills. It could be, a card of going back to university, college, apprenticeship, mastery of new skills development. The downside is they can be a little bit repetitive and boring, but you know that it's something that you need to do. The Eight of Swords is one of self-imposed restrictions. Imprisonment, maybe even a victim mentality. So you can see that does have pretty negative consequences, but whenever I see that, I want to get to the bottom of why you're feeling that. Whereas the Eight of Wands is a much more positive card, I think. It's about getting your ducks in a row. It's about movement, alignment, fast-paced change. It could even be about air travel. I guess more than anything for me, it's a card of alignment, of getting your strategy and your aims and objectives together. Nine of Cups. Card of contentment, satisfaction, wishes come true, gratitude. Card of blessings, really. What you do note on it, though, is they're by themselves. Does this mean that, you've got many blessings, but you're without a love? Could do. That to Pentacles, it's similar, but of course it's material, so it's abundance, luxury, financial independence, self-sufficiency, multiple blessings on the material level, but again, maybe you're alone. Reminded of that early Beatles song, Money Can't Buy Me Love, and I have a feeling of a sort of one of the members of the elite, maybe a multi-billionaire, and they have their private yachts full of girls from Instagram on them, but no matter how much money they spend, their lives are somewhat empty. And you might have noticed, as we've been progressing, swords have been getting progressively darker. And maybe that's a warning not to overthink, because of now we have the Nine of Swords, which is very much a card of nightmares, anxiety, worry, depression even. So, the Wands is always much more practical. It's the common man, and the Nine of Wands is about courage, resilience. Maybe it's about boundaries, persistence, test of faith. It's sort of you looking back and saying, oh yeah, I've seen that sort of thing before. I can deal with it. And with the Tens, we've sort of reached the end of this journey. So the Ten of Cups, which is about relationships, means that your relationships are all very good. Divine love, maybe even. Certainly a great deal of harmony and an alignment within your life. Translating that to materialism, Ten of Pentacles is about financial security, long-term success, and of course wealth. Keeping with the view that the swords are getting darker, the Ten of Swords is about being stabbed in the back. Very, very painful endings. Maybe unexpected betrayal, loss, crisis, deep, deep wounds. You weren't expecting this, and you know, if the swords is the knight and the wands is the common man, is it a karmic card? Is it saying, well, you know, if you live by the sword, you die by the sword? And I can't help but feel that that's exactly what it's meant to be. If the knight, the elite, is sort of racked with fear that he's going to be betrayed, stabbed in the back by people who he's stabbed in the back, retribution. The peasant, he gets put on, doesn't he, by the elite. So he feels like he's carrying the burden of the world on his shoulders, and maybe he's not even carrying it in the best way possible. But you know, he can see a lovely home to go to within near sight. He's just got to go on a little bit further, a little bit more hard work, and he'll be back with his loving family in his home. He'll be happy. We now are on the court cards, and these seem to repeat a journey, perhaps summarising the non-court cards, but sort of broader themes. Maybe it is that the journey through life you've been on, this is them sort of bedding in, if you like. So the first one we have is the Page of Cups. And the pages are very much about sort of seeking something, and this is sort of seeking out creative opportunities, your curiosity, possibilities, and maybe even intuitive messages. And Pentacles being about more material things, it's hardly surprising that the Page of Pentacles is about financial opportunities. Could be about skills development, and maybe also it indicates manifestation. Turning to the more cerebral swords, the Page of Swords is a sort of card about thirst for new knowledge, curiosity, maybe even new ideas and new ways of communicating those ideas. Page of Wands is quite similar. It's about ideas, despite being much more sort of action orientated. Maybe discovery is better. A free spirit with limitless potential. Maybe seeking inspiration. Now we turn to the Knights. So if the pages were sort of seeking, the Knights are much more about doing. So the Knight of Cups is an absolutely lovely card. A fool for love, if you like. A card of romance, charm, beauty, creativity, imagination. Someone that wears their heart on their sleeve. I call them a fool for love because of, they get taken advantage of. People throw themselves at them, and they often do sort of fool around as a result, but they're someone with a heart of gold. Whereas the Knight of Pentacles is a much more conservative sort of knight. All about hard work, productivity. It gets the job done. A knight you can absolutely rely on, but goes very, very slowly indeed. So it often signifies the slow movement of things. The Knight of Swords is the most fearless knight and fastest knight in the deck. very ambitious, action-orientated, driven to succeed, prone to jumping to the wrong conclusions. And that's often how it shows up in my own readings, that you're jumping to the wrong conclusions. The Knight of Wands is a very similar energy to the Knight of Swords. He's also quite fast. Well, he also is fast, I would say. Full of courage, very brave, self-confidence, independent. Can be something of a social butterfly, very determined. But he rushes into situations without thinking. Now, throughout, I've been calling these cards, and of course that's exactly what they are, but really, if we take the more psychological view, we should be describing them as energies. And I've also been sort of saying him and her, but the truth is there is no gender in tarot. You can see gender in it if that's what you want, but there is no gender within these energies. However, the energies of the King and Queen are very definite feminine and masculine energies, even though they may be referring to the opposite genders. It's those gender qualities we're talking of. So the Queen of Cups, the Queen of Love. So what would you expect from the Queen of Love? Well, very caring, emotionally stable, intuitive, very, very compassionate. Is she something of a fool for love like the Knight? Slightly. I think she can have the wool pulled over her eyes quite easily. What do you think the Queen of Pentacles is? Well, she's much more nurturing. Yes, she's caring, but caring about the sort of material, the physical aspects of those she's in charge of or responsible for. I often call her the single mother card, and remember there's no gender, so it's just that energy, the energy of a single mother, maybe working to support the family. You don't have to be female, doesn't have to even have children, but it's that sort of devotion to nurturing others. Whereas the Queen of Swords is almost a steel fist within a silk glove. She's independent, she gives clear judgments and clear boundaries, uses direct communications. Despite being lovely, she isn't someone you'd want to mess with. She often occurs to me when it's about you needing to set boundaries. Whereas the Queen of Wands is much more a queen of, courage. Independence, yes. Determined. She can be something of a social butterfly. She knows how to get the best out of people, but sometimes can be a wee bit manipulative. And often in my readings, that's what it means when this card crops up. On the Steampunk Tarot, she's depicted on a horse with a riding crop, and you just feel that she's the sort of woman that you'd gladly bend over for her and let her hit you with that crop. Now, if the Queen is the feminine energy, the King is the masculine energy. And I think it's probably a sort of a societal conditioning. But the Kings make us seem to be fullness. If you like, the Queens are the power behind the throne, and the Kings are the real authority. So the King of Cups, which is the King of Love, is a true diplomat. he's very emotionally balanced, despite... And it's no surprise that the King of Pentacles is someone that's good with money, or at least thinks they're good with money. Maybe they're a business leader. Discipline, abundance, quite conservative. It's about wealth as well. As I was reading out when I was talking about these non-court cards, swords seemed to get progressively worse, didn't they? But the king is somebody who's learnt from all that. It's almost as though he's learnt from his mistakes, because he's a very wise king, very wise indeed. Got a mental clarity, he's got authority, he knows the truth, seeks the truth, has very strong intellectual power, somebody that people very much look up to. Now, if the King of Swords is almost like a professor, then the natural-born leader, the entrepreneur, the visionary, the king that everybody really does look up to, is the King of Wands. And remember that he's from the peasantry. So the self-made man. Now, it could be woman, of course, but somebody that people naturally look up to because... they've had their experiences, they know where they've come from, and they've not forgotten it, but now, they're a leader. So if the non-court cards represented sort of minor energies impacting on your psychology, then the major arcana are major influences, true life lessons, karmic influences. I've not mentioned the word archetypes until now, but these are closest to true archetypes. Their meanings are often long-lasting, deep and complex. There's 21 of these, and it starts off with life's journey again. And it is a true journey through life. Remember, these are more lengthy than the others. So, to a certain degree, we could see sort of it as like waves, that the minor arcana non-court cards are ripples, the minor arcana court cards are waves, and then the major arcana are sort of the really big waves, or the ebb and flow of they're the tide, So we begin this new journey through life with the Fool card, and new beginnings, and innocence, spontaneity. We're off on a journey. We don't know where we're going. We don't know where we are, but we're very happy about going on it. We know we'll make some mistakes along the way, but we're looking forward so much to this journey. Next card is that of the Magician. So whereas the Fool didn't really have an aim, this is you trying to exert some sort of a control, some sort of power, thinking that you've got inspired action. It's probably a card about manifesting or resourcefulness. I often see it as being about manifesting. Now, I said there's no real genders, and these are just energies. So the female energy of the Magician is the High Priestess, and I also said that often the female energy seems to be somehow below that of the male, and I think it's just cultural, but but in this case, know that the female is more advanced. Sacred knowledge, the divine feminine, the subconscious mind, knows her own subconscious mind, but those of others, and therefore has intuition as a result. It's mentioned a divine feminine. Well, the true divine feminine is the Empress card. In touch with nature, beauty, nurturing, abundance. She's someone that enjoys the good things in life, but isn't greedy, wants to share them with everybody. So really is about abundance. She can indicate a pregnancy. Hardly surprising that the male equivalent of the Empress is the Emperor. And what I would say, when you have these two cards that sort of really are male and female equivalents, if they come out together, it suggests some incredible balance. It's very powerful indeed. Emperor is a father figure, a figure of authority, establishment structure, somewhat conservative, I might say. Hierophant card is a sort of a card of traditional religions, really. It could be spirituality, wisdom. Very much sort of a learning from a guru, learning from somebody that knows. It tends to be, and I mean, it could be about New Age spirituality, but it tends to be somewhat conservative and traditional about formal institutions, rather than a sort of spiritual awakening. The Lover's card, I mean, it should come as no surprise. It's about love, relationships, aligned values, you know. Could be about choices, but very harmonious, feels divine, feels something wonderful about it. You'll notice the major arcana aren't in suits, but if they were in suits, then this certainly would be the cups, you know. But yeah, it is about love. You might remember the Eight of Wands being about direction and fast pace, your aims aligned with your objectives. Well, the Chariot is that with knobs on. You're in control, you've got willpower, you're trying to succeed, you're determined to succeed. But the other wonderful thing about it is there's a great sense of balance in this. That you're balancing things in order to achieve what you need. Of course, it could also mean a journey. And you can never guess this one. The Strength card is about strength. Well, it's also about courage, influence. It is a compassionate card, persuasive card. Why do I say that? Well, it's an inner strength. Often it's depicted of a lady and a lion, and the lady is picking a thorn out of the lion's claw. And of course it's the lady and not the lion who's really strong. I consider the Hermit card to be a very important card. It's a card of going inside yourself, looking for answers. Introspection, maybe even cutting yourself off from the world so that you can find those answers. Yeah, being alone, trusting your inner guidance, soul searching, and I think it's very necessary at some times. This Wheel of Fortune can very often seem like the World card, but really the Wheel of Fortune is probably smaller cycles coming to an end. It does signify good luck. Maybe it's karmic. More a turning point. Well, no, that is cycles coming to an end, but smaller cycles. It feels like a card more of destiny, however. And again, the justice energy is somewhat alike the judgment energy. The justice energy, however, could be about actual physical justice, court cases. It's always fair. It's about the truth. About the law, if you like, cause and effect. We don't know if it's for you, against you, and if it is against you, I always say you've got nothing to worry about if you're truthful. It'll be firm, but it'll be fair, and then you can get on with your life. Only by way of illustration, but if we're talking of a journey through life, if this justice does come for you, the next card is the Hanged Man. Does it mean they're going to hang you? Well, probably not. What it means is that, maybe you'll be in jail and you'll have time to think, time to ponder things. You'll be sort of holding these things together, thinking, what am I going to do when I get out? Now, it might not be going to jail at all. You might be self-imposed. You might feel, I don't know what to make of things. I need a bit of time to think. To be so careful what I say on this platform. They've got regulations that make no sense whatsoever to a European. It's a bit like those polystyrene cups in McDonald's saying warning, danger of scalding. It's just completely laughable to a European. But we've now got the death card, and so tarot readers always say, look, it doesn't mean death. Well, it can mean death. Certainly if you're drawing it and you draw a tarot card with death on it, it's most unlikely to mean that you're about to die. What it really means is it's about endings, changes, transformations, transitions. They're often quite abrupt endings. The temperance energy could be an energy of actual temperance, avoiding things that do you harm. But, it's also about sort of balance, moderation, taking the middle ground, being patient. It's been coming out quite a lot recently in that context, a sort of forgiveness and taking the middle ground. An energy I don't like to see is this of the devil energy. Does it mean addictions? Well, it could well do. It certainly means unhealthy attachments. It's the shadow self, restrictions, maybe sexuality. It's pointing to something within your shadow. It can mean actual addictions. Often these are more psychological and that physical, as often addictions feel physical, but it's more psychological. And it's something that you can get yourself out of quite easily if only you change your mindset. Rather like the death energy is the tower energy, because it also represents sudden and abrupt endings, probably unwelcome, sudden changes, upheavals, chaos. But it's often something that's necessary because of you've built your house on wrong foundations. There's something that a way of doing things that is wrong and it needs to fall down and you need to start again. Now, I just said after the tower you need to rebuild your life. So what do we have next but the star card, which is about rebuilding. It's about hope. It's about new beginnings. It can indicate spirituality. It can indicate religion as well. I consider this to be a lovely, lovely card. A card of great hope and purpose. The Moon card, I mean, it is a card of fear, anxiety, but it may be illusion. It's the subconscious, it's the intuition, you know. If you think of the moonlight, you know, we're often frightened of things that when we wake up in the morning we realise what they are, and there's nothing to be frightened of at all, and it's that sort of an energy. Sure enough, the sun energy follows it. Card of warmth, vitality, success, positivity. If you remember when I was talking about the Five of Pentacles, card of poverty, and I said there's a poverty mindset. Well, this is the opposite. This is a very positive mindset. And, you know, people will see it in you, this positivity, and you will attract good fortune as a result of it. So a lovely card to have, this one. You remember we had the Justice card. Well, now we have the Judgment card. What's the difference? Well, Judgment is more like a Day of Judgment card rather than man-made justice. It can be about rebirth, calling, absolution. So it's like you're ending your journey, you've learnt your lessons and you're ready to start afresh. There's a karmic element very much to this card. And the final card is the World card, a card of completion, accomplishment. You've integrated all that you've learnt. It could even be a card of travel. Now remember, these are about life cycles. So whereas the Wheel of Fortune perhaps is more minor cycle, this is a major cycle. This is one that hopefully you've learnt from the cycle and you can move on to a new cycle. But that's not always the case. So I do say hopefully you can move on. But certainly it is the completion of a journey. But we often keep repeating these same journeys through life, which is why I say hopefully you've learned from it. So I've told you the meanings. What I would do if I was you, but this is just my way of doing things, I would follow my descriptions, at least at first, quite slavishly. But, you know, as you gain your confidence, you'll begin to feel different things and see how these energies impact on each other and how you put them together. But the real way you put them together is in a spread, and most people use this Celtic cross spread. I don't know why I don't use it, but it's a very adaptable spread, can answer most questions. But for some reason I've chosen not to use it and I've grown used to another spread. I think which spread you use is even more personal. It's about what seems to suit you. And what I use is an adapted horseshoe spread. I turn it on its side so it looks like a crescent moon. And I think I just do that because I'm Muslim. And I interpret it more or less as they're saying here. Except what is number 4, which is in the middle for me. Well, it's in the middle here, isn't it? But in the middle on my sideways horseshoe spread. I think this tells us what the reading is about. And very often when I do readings, particularly in Indonesia, I say to people, what do you want to know about? And they say, oh, just tell me, you know, when really there's something on their mind. And this card in this position always tells me what it's about, and with alarming accuracy. Often disarms the people that I'm reading for. 5, I don't see so much as the attitude of others, as 5 is broader than that. It's what leads to the outcome. 6, again, is more than possible obstacles. It's what would change the outcome. outcome. And often this gives you an alternative scenario, an alternative way that things might turn out. And of course, if you remember, I'm saying it's not fortune telling, it's tapping into energies impacting on your psychology. So if the outcome isn't one that seems favourable, this often gives you a route through it, a different route. And you can play on the energies that seem favourable and try and mitigate those energies that don't seem so favourable. Now, what I would say is it's all entirely personal, but you have the information now to make a start. And there's no substitute for starting to read. So good luck to you, and God bless you.